Isn't this great, you guys? Getting away from it all, leaving all our cares behind.
Yeah, and they said the weather's gonna be nice like this all day. This is exactly what I needed.
Ah, not those guys again! Why is it that every time we try to have a relaxing day, a bunch of on their Harley motorcycles show up?
God, shut up!
Hey gang, Mad again. I bet you were expecting a card games on motorcycles joke. Sorry friends, that fruit is too low hanging even for me. Okay, fine, one time.
Card games on motorcycles.
Card games on motorcycles!
There, happy? No? Alright, fine, one more time.
Card games on motorcycles.
Crow, did you hear that? Card games on motorcycles!
Card games on motorcycles?
There, that's gonna be the last time we reference that in this video, I promise. Anyway, yeah, we're on Inzektors today, but I've also included a P.U.N.K engine now. Woohoo! Are you sick of P.U.N.K yet? God, I hope not, because I literally do not know anything else. I know you Yugi boomers that opened up the video are probably hoping for that 2012 dream of a playable modern-day pure Inzektor deck. Unfortunately, just like our dreams of, I don't know, flying cars, I'm sorry to tell you friends, that dream died long ago. Best I can offer you is like a 1962 Cessna 150. However, much like the reasonably flyable 1962 Cessna 150, we do have a reasonably playable deck for you today. And if you're not a Yugi boomer and you clicked on this video, then I've got a very silly combo deck to showcase for you. If you're not familiar with the Inzektors, they're an archetype of dark insect monsters that have a unique gimmick where they can equip different Inzektor monsters to themselves as an equipment spell. But please ignore like the other 8 archetypes that can equip monsters as equipment spells. But anyway, while Inzektors are an equipment spell, they have a few different effects. Generally, it's altering levels, increasing stats, or being able to send themselves to the grave to activate some effect. But then also the monster that had the card equipped generally has some effect where if an equipment spell was sent to the grave while equipped, it'll activate some effect on the monster. Now, as an old archetype, you know these effects are all soft once per turn, which is great for us, bad for anyone else on the ladder. Sorry if you've got to sit through one of my decks. This deck takes particular advantage of these soft once per turns by combining Dragonfly, Centipede, and Hornet to set up this nice little loop of just super efficient removal, but also advantage generation. Dragonfly, when an equipment spell is removed, special summons an Inzektor from deck. Centipede, when an equipment spell is removed, adds any Inzektor card from deck to hand. And Hornet, as an equipment spell, can remove himself in order to destroy one card on the board. These 3 allow us to basically, plus like a mad lad, spam the boards with summon, and also clear your opponent's board. And Inzektors do have a special place in my heart as one of like the first real high-tier decks I ever really put together after getting back into the game. Inzektors were an easy tier 1 deck back in the day. If you were able to assemble these 3 cards here, you were able to put together a pretty easy OTK. And I know, a 3-card OTK, stop the presses, but please remember this was back in 2012. Konami had not yet decided that if you get 4 monsters on the board, you're supposed to just win the game. Generally, the 2012 version of this deck played in such a way that if you didn't open the cards you need, you slowly control the board while you assemble the pieces you need over 2 to 3 turns. And then you just have like one really extremely explosive turn where you just blow your opponent out of the game, either where you just end it there on the spot or you're up like 10 cards in your opponent and they have no chance of coming back. Now we're in 2023, we really don't have the luxury of waiting 2 to 3 turns to get our pieces together, so Inzektors have kind of fallen by the wayside even after getting all of their limited cards back to 3. However, they did receive a certain piece of legacy support. Yugiohmasterduel just received this card in the new pack, and it's obviously flown under the radar. I know it's because Inzektors are pretty not good. But anyway, this card does really improve the deck. The important effect of Zektrike allows you to send one Inzektor card from your hand or face up on the field in order to special summon an Inzektor from deck or equip it to one on the board. This spell basically fixes one of the major issues that the deck had, and that's where where you were just missing one particular piece. It was either one of the monsters you needed on board or one of the equipment monsters as a spell. And this one basically fixes that by allowing you to either special summon one to board or equip it as an equipment spell. Ideally, the way we'll use this card is you'll have an Inzektor on board with another Inzektor equipped to it as an equipment spell. You'll send that equipment spell to the grave, and then that'll trigger the effect. for either your Dragonfly or your Centipede. And then after that, hopefully you have all the pieces you need in order to combo off. So the next question, why the P.U.N.K engine? Well, for one, our opponent might think we're playing an actual good deck, but also the Inzektors can equip other Inzektors. It's either from hand or grave, so we really don't care if our Hornet is in the grave. So by adding in the P.U.N.K engine, we gain easy access to Chaos Ruler, but also the Zombie Vampire. And Zeoman alone is the full Chaos Ruler Zombie Vampire line. So between 3 Zeoman, 3 Ogre Dance, and 2 E-Telly, we have a 67% chance of opening that line, which is pretty nice. And regarding the mill itself, Chaos Ruler mills 5, getting what you need in the grave, but also possibly adding an Inzektor card to hand since all the Inzektors are dark. And then the Zombie Vampire is going to mill an additional 4, and also possibly special summoning an Inzektor on the board if you do happen to get lucky. And since we can loop equipping a single Hornet over and over, we really only need to find just the one single Hornet, either in the 5 cards we open or in those additional 9 cards we mill. And in terms of why the milling is so nice, we've also included 2 copies of Ladybug, because Ladybug can also remove herself in order to trigger effects. So that can get your combo started. So between the 14 cards, meaning the 5 cards in hand, and the 9 additional cards we mill, in a 42 card deck, we have an 88% chance of finding one or more of the pieces we need to combo off. If you were to cut the Ladybugs, that does drop that down to about 71%, so I think it's a little bit better just including those 2 Ladybugs in there. I know the next question you have is, what if we don't find one of the pieces we need or don't open the punks? Well, just hope and pray your opponent works harder than you. Yeah, you know we take those. Also, there are hands where just finding Inzektor cards makes it work, but typically you need 3 pieces to combo, and it's somewhat particular pieces, so it's not as likely to happen. So that's the general idea of the deck. Before we go over the card by card, once again, this deck just isn't good. You'll see it in some of the duels, and just from the obvious clue that no one is playing this deck on ladder. I do want to get that out of the way before we get much further into this. But we don't always venture onto ladder to win. No, sometimes we want to style on some kids, and Inzektors are perfect for that. So with that, let's look at the card by card. For Inzektors, I know I already gave a brief rundown of some of them, but real quick, we're on 3 Hornet. He can equip an Inzektor monster to himself as an equipment spell, but more importantly, where he really shines is when he himself is an equipment spell, where he can remove himself in order to destroy a card on the field. Useful for clearing opponent's boards, but also our own board in order to trigger effects. We're on triple Centipede, where he can equip another Inzektor, but when an equipment spell is removed, he searches any Inzektor card. Obviously extremely strong. And then we are on 3 Dragonfly, where he has the equipping effect, but also when equipment spell is removed, you can special summon an Inzektor from your deck, except of course another copy of Inzektor Dragonfly. But since we're looping the one Dragonfly's effect over and over, we really only need to see the one on board. These are the 3 main pieces of the combo, basically allowing our pops, searches, and summons. And the reason we're on 3 of each is we need to find Dragonfly and Hornets. We need to run the max amount that we can there just so we can find them. And then we need monsters in deck for Dragonfly to summon, so we're on triple Centipede, since he's obviously the best one to summon off of Dragonfly. Regarding Ladybug, we're on 2 Ladybug, which I kind of went over before just for the ratio purposes of just finding a monster that can equip, because as an equipment spell, it can pop itself in order to trigger effects. It has a level manipulation effect, which can come up in some builds, and back in the day, it was used for some XYZ strategies. But I'm sorry to say we're not really utilizing this in our current build, because we're mostly looking to just link spam. But really the important part is that Ladybug can remove themselves as an equipment spell in order to trigger our Centipedes or our Dragonflies effects. We're on 1 Gigamantis and 1 Gigaweevil. Both can equip themselves from the hand to an Inzektor on the board. They have some stat modifying effects, but that's not really the important part of why we're running them. The more important part is that they can equip themselves as an equipment spell, but also when they're sent to the grave as an equipment spell, they can special summon an Inzektor in the grave. So great for recovery and extension, and as extra equipment spells you can equip onto Dragonfly to keep your combo going. But do note, the equipping effect is not a once per turn, but the special summon from grave is a once per turn. So just keep that in mind as you get into the combo. That does bring us to our next card, which is Inzektor Sword Zectcalibur, which has a pretty significant stat increase, but more importantly, it's searchable by Centipede because it's an Inzektor card. And then when it's sent to grave, you can target an Inzektor monster in your grave and add it back to hand. So we can recycle the Gigas in order to have additional equipment spells we can equip under like our Dragonfly. Last, we're on the 3 Zektrike. Note this card is searchable by Centipede, even though Inzektor isn't in the name. This card does such a fantastic job at facilitating our combo. We want to find this card basically as much as possible.
Card games on motorcycles.
Card game on motorcycles.
But the effect is a hard once per turn. For the extra deck, it's really hard to say this is strictly a Inzektor monster, but Pika, she works great with the B Troopers, even better with its native archetype. You can discard a card to equip another insect on board with an insect from deck. Perfect if you need to find Hornet, but it doesn't have to be Hornet. Typically, I'll be equipping Resonance Insect just to get the pluses off Resonance Insect. She also has a Pot of Avarice-like effect, which is great for recovering centipedes back into deck to allow Dragonfly to keep summoning monsters from deck. Both of her effects are hard once per turns, but they're such great effects. We definitely want to be using both throughout our combo. And it's also nice that she is an Inzektor monster, because once in the grave, you could revive her with the Giga's effect for 2 free extra link material, which is useful for link climbing. For P.U.N.K, I already went over the ratios, but just to go through the line real quick, we want to find Zeoman, summon Zeoman to go into Chaos Ruler, and the Zombie Vampire. Ideally, we get out Zeoman with E-Tele to save our normal summon, but if not, there's usually no problem summoning Zeoman, but you can pay 600 to search out another P.U.N.K. Typically, you're searching out Foxy-Tune. Foxy-Tune can discard another card in order to special summon a different non-level 8 P.U.N.K from deck, which is usually going to be our one-up Deer Note, who's level 5 plus 3, that makes 8 to synchro into Chaos Ruler, and then when Deer Note goes to grave, you can special summon one of your level 8 P.U.N.Ks in the grave. You can overlay the level 8 P.U.N.K that you revive and Chaos Ruler to go into the Zombie Vampire. Last, Ogre Dance works as a Rhoda, basically for just specifically Zeoman. Sometimes, occasionally, Deer Note if you can use Deer Note's hand effect. It's also a level 8 which comes up. For non-engine, we're on 3 Max C, 3 Ash, 2 Called By. Yep. We're on 1 Pot of P. Sometimes you just need that one singular piece to combo off, and this card helps you find it. And if you draw it, we're running a bunch of duplicates in the extra deck, so it's usually not too hard to find some cards to banish for its cost. For other non-engines, since the Inzektors are insect, we're going to take advantage of that typing by including a bunch of the really strong insect support, including some of the B Troopers. But before we get into that, we're on the one of Goki Pole, who, when he's sent to the grave, can search for level 4 insect, which are typically searching for Dragon Bite, who on summon can special summon a different insect from hand, which can be useful, but probably more useful is the fact that he's a tuner, but he can banish an insect from grave in order to increase the level of an insect on board. And with most of the Inzektors being level 3, that means we're able to easily make Dragon Bite a level 7, and then synchro him with one of the other level 3 Inzektors on board for easy access to P.U.N.K, just as some powerful negation and just powerful monster to get on the board. We're on the 1 Resonance Insect, who has 2 very powerful, not once per turn effects. Where he's sent from the field to grave, he can search a level 5 higher insect, which will usually be the next card we'll go over, but you can also search out the Inzektor Gigas in a pinch. And when Resonance is banished, you can send 1 insect from grave. Typically, you're sending Goki Pole to trigger that effect, but you could also send a Hornet to grave if you needed to find Hornet that way. But the typical play is get Resonance Insect on the board, get him to grave to trigger that surge, get him banished to send Goki Pole to grave, Goki Pole to search Dragon Bite. And that's the main way we're taking advantage of those 3 in this deck. We're on the 1 Beat Trooper Sting Lancer. He has in hand, he has a DD Crow-like hand effect, but on special summon, he can search any B Trooper spell or trap, and then we're on the 1 Fly and Sting, just as a piece of interruption we can put on our end boards. And we have a way to easily special summon Sting Lancer as part of our combo. Last, we're on Heavy B Trooper Mighty Neptune. He's a somewhat sticky monster with really big stats, but you can also recycle banished monsters, which helps to recover some of our resources. He's also ideally one of our end board monsters, because this is typically who I like to search with Resonance Insect. And then he also pairs really well with Fly and Sting, since he's a B Trooper monster that sticks on the board well. For the extra deck, Chaos Ruler, Zombie Vampire, milling cards, yeah. P.U.N.K just as part of our end boards, big stats, powerful Omni-Negate, ability to pop cards, yeah, what's not to like. We're on the 1 Cicada King. For 1, he's an insect and has an insect reviving effect. But he also has nice interruption. We generally don't have any issue getting 2 level 3s on board, so he fits pretty nicely into the deck. We're on 1 IP Mask, is one of the best link 2s we can go into when we need to free up some space, but also as some possible interruption when we pair it with Nightmare Unicorn. We're on 2 Armor Horn. He's a useful monster we can link into that also gives us an additional normal summon, great for extending and also as part of our combos. We're on 2 Papillion, as a strong level 3 link monster that pairs well with insects. The B Trooper link monsters special summon lock you into insects only while they're on the board. So this is a useful link monster to go into when you need to get Armor Horn off the board. for example. But Papillion also has a powerful reviving effect that's pretty handy. We're on 1 Apollo USA. We're spamming the board, so we've got plenty of material to go into her as a way to set up just Infect, Interruption, just a strong monster. We're on the 1 Access Code Talker as a finisher, and then we're on the 1 B Trooper Invincible Atlas as just a Towers-like monster with big stats, but also he's part of our combo. Usually we're using him in order to special summon Sting Lancer, and that's how we're getting access to Fly and Sting. That covers the card by card and sort of my rationale for each. Next, we'll go over comboing with this deck, where hopefully that'll, kind of bring this all together. But after that, we'll have some duels just to showcase the deck in action. Then I'll go over some other cards you might want to consider, and then give you some final thoughts. But with that, let's see what the deck can do. I unfortunately don't have a strict combo guide for this deck. Because the mills are random, a lot of it leaves everything up to chance and how you approach comboing. So really, you just need to get proficient at piloting the deck and really understand each of the Inzektors and how they work together, and also what you're trying to build towards, and also just tying all the other cards together with it. So my goal with the next portion is to kind of go over some tips I have for how to combo with this deck, how I'm approaching it, and why I'm making the moves I'm making. I know this is a bit different for me, but really I'm not showing you the combos for the deck. I'm just trying to show you how to find the lines for this deck. Generally, the loop we want to set up is number 1, get Inzektor Dragonfly on the field. Number 2, get an equipment spell card on Inzektor Dragonfly. Number 3, find a way to pop that equipment spell in order to trigger his effect to special summon another Inzektor, and also hopefully at the same time search another equipment spell that we can put on Dragonfly, and we typically do that by utilizing Centipede to search out that extra equipment spell. And all might sound confusing, but hopefully that'll make sense once we get into it. The combo is extremely long and not simple. While playing this deck, the timer is absolutely brutal, just because number 1, the length of the combo, but also the time you need to spend to think through some of the steps. You need to be fast and have a pretty strong understanding of all the cards uh, when you take it to ladder. Otherwise, it won't be like opponents you're losing to, but it's just going to be the timer itself, or you're just going to find yourself really screwing up the combo because you're going to get yourself into some sort of insect lock, or there's not going to be any board space for you to make the play that you need to, or just one of the other multiple problems that might come up if you don't do the line properly. So anyway, let's just kind of review some of the lines in my thought process real quick. You can see here we have the emergency teleport in hand, and we know that's full combo for at least the punk line. So let's go ahead and activate that emergency teleport, have the mills happen, see what we hit, see if we can make something happen off of that. So we'll start off by activating the emergency teleport. Of course, summon Zayaman. Activate Zayaman's effect. Normally you would search out Foxy Tune, but because I have that Ghost Ogre in hand, we could just search out Deer Note and just use Deer Note's hand effect. This plays around Ash Blossom a little better. So activate Deer Note, special summon Deer Note on the field. And then you will synchro these two off for Chaos Ruler. And then I usually do Chaos Ruler, Chainlink 1, Deer Note, Chainlink 2. That plays around Ghost Ogre a little better, who I think is a little more common than Ghost Bell. And then you'll, of course, activate Deer Note. You will target whatever level 8 is in the grave. Just get that back on board because you're about to exceed them off to go into the Zombie Vampire. Chaos Ruler Resolve. Let's see what we hit. Ladybug's nice. Centipede is okay. We can add that to hand. And Gigamantis is pretty good, too. So we'll just go ahead and add Centipede to hand, just because we still have our normal summon. Activate Zombie Vampire. I'm hoping to hit maybe like a Dragonfly or something. Let's see what we hit. And it looks like we hit a Hornet and a Centipede, which is pretty good. That should allow us to combo off from here, especially since we still have our normal summon. So let's go ahead and activate Centipede. We're going to equip We're going to equip Hornet. We're going to activate Hornet. Go ahead and just pop the Zombie Vampire. He's just going to end up eating up space, so we don't need him on board. And then that's going to allow Centipede to trigger. We're going to activate his effect, and since we still have our normal summon, let's go ahead and grab... actually, sorry, I'm going to grab Zektrike here, because I still have my normal summon. So now I'll activate Centipede, and we will equip Hornet, and now I'll activate Zektrike, and then we will de-equip the Hornet that's on that Centipede, which will allow us to special summon Dragonfly from deck. And then that's going to trigger the Centipede that had that Hornet as an equipment, which will allow us to search out an equipment spell that we can put on Dragonfly to keep the combo rolling. So let's go ahead and get Inzektor Sword. So now we'll activate Inzektor Sword. We'll equip it to one of our Centipedes. Now we'll activate Dragonfly. And we'll equip him with Hornet, and now we pretty much have the loop set up, as you'll see. So activate Hornet, and then you want to pop that sword, because that will trigger both Dragonfly and Centipede's effect. It's also going to trigger Sword, so we're going to recover that Gigamantis that we milled previously, which is useful. Usually I try to put Dragonfly as one of the lower chain links, just a chain block, but if your opponent would have had hand traps, they would have probably used them already. So usually you want to add one of the Gigas to hand. Usually want to add the Gigas before the Zek Sword. Usually I add the Zek Sword after I have a Giga in hand, a Giga engraved, so I can recover that Giga. Since I already had that Giga engraved, that's why I added the sword. So now before we do another part of the loop, we want to go ahead and link off our 2 centipedes that use their effect into Pico Felina. We want to activate Pico Felina's effect, discard whatever garbage you have in hand. We're actually going to do Neptune at this point because we can recover that Neptune, which you'll see real quick. Activate Pico Felina's effect. I will equip Resonance Insect, and now I'll activate Pico Felina's effect. We want to put 2 centipedes back in deck, and then I'll put that Neptune back in deck because we were about to search that Neptune again anyway. And then it looks like we already found Dragon Bite, so we won't have to search him out later either. So you can see how this combo sometimes gets pretty random. You just kind of have to play it by ear. So activate Centipede, equip him with Hornet, use that Hornet to pop that Resonance Insect that's equipped to Dragonfly. Now it'll trigger all these effects for that just, you know, crazy +3 right there. There's not really any good equipments for Centipede to search out, so let's just go ahead and search out a Dragonfly, possibly for next turn. Maybe that comes up. And now you'll use that Dragonfly to special summon a Centipede that already went back to deck. Use Resonance Insect to search out the Mighty Neptune, and we see our hand's getting pretty big at this point. Let's go ahead and activate Chaos Ruler. Might as well. We're about to use him as link material, so you can banish Foxy-Tune and Zombie Vampire for your Light and Dark. And we want to get Pico Felina engraved so we can start reviving Pico Felina just to use as extra link material. So we will link these 3 off for a 3-mat Apollo USA. And now we'll activate our Centipede's effect. We want to put the Hornet back on him. And then we can activate one of the Gigas in our hand to equip it onto Dragonfly. And now you'll use Hornet to pop the Giga Weevil. And now you can trigger everyone's effect again. So let's go ahead and get Pico Felina back on the board just for you know, the extra link material. Let's activate Centipede, activate Dragonfly. Search out our last Centipede. Activate Centipede. Let's just get a Hornet in hand for next turn. We have Dragonfly and Hornet in hand. That's pretty strong. Then Giga Weevil, put Pico Felina back on board. Activate our last Giga. Equip him on the Dragonfly. Activate Centipede, equip him with Hornet. We know we're about to pop that Giga Weave or the Giga Mantis with Hornet. And we want to get that Pico Felina into the grave so we can revive it again. So let's just link her off with the Centipede we've already used. And we can go into a link 3 for our Papillion. Activate Hornet, pop Giga Mantis, trigger all their effects again. And special summon a Hornet, because Hornet can also attach a card to it, and he's also a level 3, which is ideal for us. So at this point, let's just go ahead and go into Armor Horn. The way we utilize Armor Horn is we want to get Dragon Bite onto the board. Now, typically, Dragon Bite wouldn't be on our hand already, so we want to get our Armor Horn engraved, because we can use Armor Horn to banish Resonance Insect, and then we can trigger Resonance Insect's effect. So we'll go ahead and link these 2 off into Invincible Atlas. We're not going to leave Invincible Atlas on the board because he is going to lock us into insect-only monsters. So we'll use him to tribute himself. in order to get out Sting Lancer, and then Sting Lancer, when he special summon, will activate his effect in order to search out Flying Sting. So now we can go ahead and set. Now we have Flying Sting for interruption. So now we can activate Armor Horn's effect, banish 3, make sure at least one of them is Resonance Insect, and make sure they're all main deck monsters. Usually I do Resonance Insect, Resonance Insect, and 2 of my Centipedes, which you'll see why momentarily. It's going to trigger Resonance Insect's effect. We're going to send Goki Pull. No more Goki Pull would search out that Dragon Bite, but there's no one else for him to search. And now you'll use Armor Horn in order to normal summon that Dragon Bite. And now we need to get Armor Horn off the board. And really the only thing to go into, P.U.N.K can only activate his effect to get counters once per turn, so there's really no reason to go into him there. So let's just put a Pico Felina on the board. Not ideal, but it's pretty much all we can do. Now we can activate Dragon Bite's effect. We can banish level 3. Usually I do Goku Pull. Now, you can target either of them, but usually I just target himself. And now you have 10 stars to go into Brown. And then now I can summon Mighty Neptune. Go ahead and activate his effect. I'll usually return the Centipedes just for follow-up for next turn. And then we can set Flying Sting, and now we have our end board. And we can also go to the end phase to activate Mighty Neptune's effect, which will give 1,000 attack to Smother Insect. There are some other cards we could have gone for, like we probably could have gone for Cicada King. Just would have required some different play, but I'm also going to show you how to kind of combo if you open 3 particular pieces of Inzektor cards. So let's go ahead and go over that next. There are a few different combinations of cards, of Inzektor cards that work together that will allow you to combo off. You'll just kind of have to get a feel for which ones work. Typically, it's going to be like Dragonfly or Centipede. They're going to be your normal summon. Then you need either the Ladybug or Hornet to equip them, for Centipede to equip onto himself and to have their effect pop. And then typically some other equipper. It's usually like one of the Gigas or Zekcalibur. Also, Zektrike also works as well, typically to get your combo rolling. If you're playing this deck, you're going to get a feel for it. You're going to understand which ones will work together. So it's just going to take practice. For this particular case, for this particular line, I'll be showing you these 3 do work together, which we'll show here now. So let's go ahead and normal summon Centipede. Activate his effect. We're going to equip Ladybug. Not having access to Hornet right away is going to make this a little trickier, but we'll be able to gain access to it by going to Pico Felina at one point. So let's go ahead and activate Centipede. That's going to activate his effect. Doesn't matter what it does. I usually do 1 just in case. And now let's go ahead and add Zektrike to hand. So let's go ahead and activate Gigamantis. We'll equip it onto Centipede. This will give us that extra search that we need when we use the Zektrike effect, because it can be from hand or field. So let's send Gigamantis to the grave. And now we'll special summon Dragonfly onto the field. And that's going to trigger Centipede's effect. So let's go ahead and search out an extra equipper that we can use later. We didn't want to trigger Gigamantis because we want to save his effect for later. So we'll add Zekcalibur. Activate Dragonfly's effect. Equip him with Ladybug. Send Ladybug to the grave. I usually just pick the same Inzektor that I already increased the level on, just because they're usually the ones that are going to be leaving the board. That's going to trigger Dragonfly's effect. Let's go ahead and special summon Centipede. Let's activate that Centipede. Once again, just equip that Ladybug. Activate it for a search. Activate Centipede's effect. And because none of them can equip themselves with Hornet at this point, I didn't add Hornet, I just add another Giga just for later. And now we'll go into Pico. Activate Pico's effect, discard whatever. And now you can equip Hornet. So now we have Hornet in rotation. And then we need to get our Centipedes back in deck, so let's go ahead and recycle them. Let's also put Gigamantis back, because we'll be able to search out that Gigamantis again later with Centipede. So I realized I made a mistake there by equipping him with a Zecalibre there because I didn't have anything to get back with that Zecalibre. So let's just go ahead and equip him with that Giga Weevil, and we'll save that Zecalibre here for a second. So we'll go ahead and pop the Giga Weevil because we're going to pop him first. And then that's going to trigger two instances of Dragonfly's effect. So you will actually get Special Summon twice here. Because they did a very good job at wording Dragonfly's effect. Special Summon 2 Centipedes. Activate Centipede's effect. Now we've got Hornet in rotation. Very, very nice. Activate Hornet. Pop the equipment spell. Let's equip the Dragonfly. Activate Zecalibre. We're going to add Giga Weevil back to hand. And then trigger both of these effects. And you can tell I was getting lazy at this point. Dragonfly usually do not leave as the last chain to the first chain item to resolve. But it doesn't matter, obviously, against the computer opponent. But obviously, Special Summon Centipede, search out Gigamantis. That's going to trigger, get Giga Weevil back. Activate Centipede's effect. Equip Hornet. Activate Giga Weevil's effect. Equip him. Unfortunately, we're not going to get to use the revive effect on Giga Weevil. But sometimes it can't be helped. Pop Giga Weevil. Trigger all their effects except for Giga Weevil because then there won't be room to special summon the monster off Dragonfly. And just start adding cards to hand for next turn. Dragonfly, go ahead and special summon Hornet. And now we want to get Pico in the grave so we can start utilizing her to revive. So let's just link these 3 off for a 3-mat Apollo. And I couldn't use the Centipede there that Darty used its effect because Apollo does require different names, so just keep that in mind. I also could have linked the 2 Centipedes that use their effect off in order to go into IP Mask and then go into a 2-mat Apollo instead. That also would have been an option. Go ahead and activate Dragonfly. Go ahead and activate Gigamantis. Go ahead and activate Centipede. And we're going to target Picofelina because we want to reuse it again for link climbing. And once again, Centipede, we've pretty much already searched everything out, so we're just adding cards to hand just for follow-up for next turn. And because we weren't able to get the Resonance Insect equipped with Picofelina because we had to search out the Hornet, you can see our combo line's getting a little different because we weren't able to get the Resonance in rotation, so we couldn't search out Mighty Neptune, and we also couldn't get Goki pull into grave. So our end board's going to end up looking different. But that's fine. You just have to get flexible with the deck, and you'll get a feel for it as you get into it. So we'll go ahead and link these 2 off for Armor Horn. Sure, let's just go ahead and activate the effect, just get an extra monster on board. We can go into Dragonfly, and we can also use that Dragonfly's effect again if we need to. Good use of Armor Horn is to link him off for Invincible Atlas. So we'll use that Dragonfly to equip himself with one of the Gigas. And because there's really no reason to get Invincible Atlas off the board because we can't go into Barone or anything like that, we'll go ahead and leave him on the field just as a strong monster to keep. And then we'll just tribute off one of our Dragonflies to get out this Flying Sting. And we can use these 2 to go into Papillion. You can see we didn't use the Dragonfly's effect there. We didn't really need it. We were just trying to get the pop in order to get Picofelina back out of the grave. And now we have 2 level 3s on board. Sure, let's just go into Cicada King, just for more interruption. So it's a different board. It's still a pretty strong board. We got quite a few interruptions, and then we've got a Towers-like monster. So you just have to get a feel for the combos and just kind of go from there. Just remember where your choke points are at, when you need to link certain things off, things like that. You'll get a feel for it. My general recommendations are like make sure you use Pico to put centipedes back into the deck. Use Pico's effect to equip Resonance if you can, otherwise get Hornet if it's needed. I usually recommend using Resonance to search Mighty Neptune. Also use the Giga's Revive effect to revive Pico after you've linked her off. But remember, sometimes the Gigas can revive a Dragonfly or a Centipede in a pinch. Make sure you search and pop Zek-Caliber while you have a Giga already in the grave, because remember, the Giga's effect to equip from hand is not once per turn. Remember, Armorhorn and Atlas insect lock you while they're on the board. Also, use Armorhorn to banish Resonance in order to trigger Resonance to dump Gokipole, and then you use Gokipole to search Dragonbite, and then use the extra normal summon from Armorhorn to summon Dragonbite. But also remember, sometimes the extra normal summon from Armorhorn could extra normal summon a Dragonfly or a Centipede, if you could somehow make the combo work off that. Always just remember, you will have to be ready to adapt with this deck if you really want to play it well, and that's pretty much the best recommendation I can give. Just learn the cards, and you'll get a feel for it. But that's pretty much all I've got in terms of the combo portion of this video. Next, I've got some duels just to showcase the deck in action. Sit back and enjoy! So these first couple of duels are most of my footage for this deck, unfortunately. I get to combo off, but then, the opponent's not really interested in sitting there for it, which is completely understandable. I have been known to scoop when shit's happening from time to time. So you can see I'm looping the Dragonflies, I'm looping the Centipedes with the Hornet, and eventually my opponent just gets sick of it, and he's done, he's out of there. GG. This is another similar story. You can see our hand looks a little nutty. We got that E-Telly, we go Zayaman, we go Foxy Tune, we go into Chaos Ruler, activate the effect. My opponent's got no interaction. We find a Dragonfly, we know I still have my normal summon. We even found Gokipole there, let's pop that, why not? We had the Resonance Insect, that was probably a mistake, but it doesn't really matter. My opponent's not going to be there long. We're going to get Zombie Vampire off the board just by popping them. And we're going to start looping out the Dragonfly and the Hornet. And yeah, my opponent's sick of that. Good game, I guess. Alright, how about some actual interesting duels now that we've got those out of the way? So we've got E-Telly and we've got the Zektrike in hand. Pretty much ideal cards we want to see on our opener. Looking really good. So let's go ahead and do the line. My opponent's got no interruption, so let's just go ahead and get the combo going from there. We go into Chaos Ruler. We chain the Deer Note. We're going to bring back Foxy Tune. Chaos Ruler's going to resolve. We found a Giga Weevil as a card to add to hand. We're actually going to add the Giga Weevil, not the Dragonfly, because we don't necessarily need the Dragonfly at this point because we've got the Zektrike. So I would rather have the Giga Weevil. So we'll activate Zombie Vampire. We actually hit another Dragonfly, so that's kind of nutty. We're going to go ahead and activate, equip the Ladybug. It's going to activate the effect. Get out Centipede. At this point, we'll go ahead and activate Zektrike to put a Hornet onto Dragonfly. Will activate that effect of Hornet to pop the Zombie Vampire in order to get a Centipede. Activate Centipede's effect. We'll equip that Giga Weevil we added earlier onto Dragonfly. We'll pop that in order to trigger both of their effects. Get out a Hornet because with our third Centipede's in hand, unfortunately. We'll link these two off for Pico Felina. We'll activate Pico Felina's effect. Go ahead and discard that Centipede in order to equip Resonance Insect. We're going to send back 2 Centipedes and Mighty Neptune back into deck in order to, we're about to search that out with our Resonance Insect, which will trigger Resonance and Dragonfly's effect. We'll add Mighty Neptune to hand. We'll activate Dragonfly's effect, special summon Centipede. Banish 2 for Chaos Ruler. We will link these 3 off for Apollo USA. Activate Gigamantis. Put them on to the Dragonfly. Activate Hornet, pop Gigamantis. That's going to activate Gigamantis. Bring back Pico. Activate Centipede. Activate Dragonfly. Just add Dragonfly follow-up if possible. And we're going to do the pop again. We're going to add and then add. Link these 2 off for Armorhorn. Link these 2 off for Invincible Atlas. Activate that. Bring out Sting Lancer. Search out Flying Sting. activate Armor Horn, banish 3. We just want to get that Resonance Insect banished because that's going to last in Gogi Pole, which will allow us to search out Dragon Bite. Link these two off for Papillion. And I probably could have done this a little cleaner. It got a little awkward because my Dragonfly was no longer a level 3. So I got the Ladybug out of the deck in order to go get the 10 stars from Brone. Then I summoned Mighty Neptune and then set the Flying Sting. And my opponent opened with a Kaiju, and it's against Runick. Very fun. He also is going to negate my Apollo's effect. There goes most of my interaction. All we're left with now is the Flying Sting, which is pretty unfortunate. But let's see what we can make happen. He's got the Fountain. He's got Hyperia. It looks like it is Spright Runick. I guess that's usually just a given. And he's got the full Spright line. I mean, I guess obviously he opened a level 2 monster. He's got the full Spright line. We're going to hold Flying Sting. We're going to try to get it on this elf if possible. He's going to get out of red, which is going to make it a little unfortunate for our Papillion. We are going to try to fire it here, which is going to get him to respond with the red. And at this point, we can respond to Flying Sting when he tries to activate elf. Papillion gets negated, but there really wasn't anything we were bringing back that was that useful, so it didn't really matter. He does try to banish the Mighty Neptune. I guess he didn't read it. Mighty Neptune, even if he's banished, does get to come back, which is very nice. So now we have a 4,300 attack Papillion, which is pretty big, and a Tikaboo is absolutely brutal to this board. I don't know if we can really play around that at all. So let's see. I go ahead and fire the Ash here, which ended up being probably the biggest mistake that cost me the duel. I ended up keeping the Hornet because I want to keep an Inzektor on board that I can use to pop the Tikaboo. I definitely should have held the Ash for the Fountain because then you got to draw 3. Now there's pretty much no hope for me. I am so low on the deck cards in my deck because I searched out like all of them just doing the Inzektor line. So now I have no cards left in deck. I still haven't popped the Tikaboo because it negated me. I will normal summon Dragonfly, we'll equip Hornet. At this point we'll pop the Tikaboo, but obviously there's no cards left in deck for me to search out anyone with Dragonfly. No way for me to go into Papillion because I have no cards in hand. It's just an unfortunate position to be in to really play around anything. He's going to draw 1 card and pass, and I lose that duel. Unfortunately, there probably was a line for me to win the duel, but like I said, the timer on this deck is just so absolutely brutal. I'm just trying to play my cards as quick as possible. Sometimes it's hard for me to find the lines, but it was an interesting duel. I'm glad I got to show it off, and GG. Alright, so next duel's up, and it looks like we're against the president himself, Sleepy Joe Brandon. Let's see what we can do. Let's go ahead and start with the Ogre Dance, get the Zayam, and try to get that to do the search. Let's go.
All due respect, that's a bunch of malarkey.
And he's got the Ash Blossom, so no search, and that's basically going to be the end of our turn, but we do have Ash Blossom Max C. That is an FTK against most decks, so let's see how that goes. It's going to open with that pot of P, see what he finds. Interesting. Summon limit could be a big issue, but he goes ahead and grabs the Eldlich. So let's see what we can do on our turn now. So we'll try the Zayaman again since it didn't clear it. Go ahead and activate Deer Note. And that's going to eat a Torrential. This does actually trigger Deer Note though, so let's just go ahead and get back the Ogre Dance. Just get a big body on board. We'll go to battle phase. It's going to activate that Eldlich, but we have the Ash Blossom for that, so let's fire that now. And we'll get him for 25. We'll go ahead and set Ladybug since I don't really have anything to equip the Ladybug, but if I happen to draw like a Hornet off top on next turn, that's a pretty big deal, and Ladybug in the grave isn't that big a deal, so we'll go ahead and just set that. He's going to activate his effects, get another trap in the background, and set one from hand and pass it back to me. Let's see what we can do. Let's flip up. We drew Centipede off the top is pretty good. We'll flip up Centipede, go to battle, because we'll put him on like a 2-turn clock instead of 3. We'll chain his monster, we'll chain Ash. Now we can summon Centipede.
Get your work straight, Jack.
And he responds with a Tikaboo. That's a little unfortunate, but we might be able to play around that, because that actually put that Ladybug in the grave, which we can use to equip into Centipede and then activate Centipede's effect, just search out that Hornet for follow-up on next turn. We can easily pop that Tikaboo, shouldn't be an issue. I'm just going to set 2 more and pass back to us. Very slow game we have going here. We'll try to pop his newly set back row.
Now let's see how well you fare against my Biden blast! Yeah!
But that Imperm happened to be in the same column as his Trap Monster, which makes it go back to the back row, so he activates his Trap Monster again, and he put it back into another Imperm column, so they're just going to, they're going to chill back there in the back row. I guess the president missed his nap today. He is very sleepy today. So he sets another back row, but we should be able to clean this up from here with a couple of Hornet pops. We'll activate Centipede, equip Hornet, use Hornet, pop that Peekaboo. Now we're free to flip up that Ladybug that we have set. Flip up Ladybug, activate Ladybug, equip Hornet. We use Centipede to zero out Dragonfly just to follow up and whatever he has in that back row we can deal with. Hornet's gonna get popping there. We'll link these 3 off for Nightmare Unicorn, just clear off that last back row. He's only got 1400 life points. We'll get him for lethal here. GG. Thanks for the game, Mr. President. Alright, let's see how the deck can do going second. Our hand's actually pretty nutty. We pretty much found every Inzektor card we'd want to find, so let's see what we can do. We do have Max C for him, but he's got the Ash Blossom. Minigame lost for us, unfortunate, and his Live Twin Spright. And he's got, you know, full combo, so looking not great for us, but maybe we can pick through his board. Let's see if we play smart. He's got the Spright Elf, he's got the Evil Twins, he's got the Carrot on board. And he's also got red. This is going to be extremely hard to play through, but let's try it for, you know, for the hell of it. Ladybug off the top does help a lot, so let's go ahead and normal summon Dragonfly. We'll go ahead and equip him with the Giga Weevil, and then we'll activate Zektrite. That is going to eat up the Carrot. Smart move from him. And then we'll activate Dragonfly, and then we'll chain block with the Giga Weevil so we can't red that, but he will pop our Dragonfly, which is unfortunate. So Giga Weevil comes back. We can special summon Giga Mantis. Now we can threaten going to battle phase. That's going to force his elf effect there. Now we'll try to go into Armor Horn, and then we'll activate Armor Horn, and then that's going to eat the red, and then that's basically all she wrote. We scoop it up there. GG. Yeah, deck's not the best going second. Alright, we won the coin toss this time. Let's see what we can do. We'll go ahead and start off with Zayaman. That eats Nash. You know, it always eats a Nash, so Zayaman Pass, just a classic Inzektor end board. Free back row and the Banshee. He's going to beat over the Zayaman and pass it back to me. Not the most threatening board. Let's see what we can do against it. Dragonfly off the top, pretty big. Go ahead and activate Dragonfly. That's going to get a Sanguine Response. We'll equip Dragonfly with the Giga Mantis. That is going to get the Counter Trap Response, which was definitely the incorrect spot for him to throw out his interruptions. The nice part about this deck, no one knows how to play against it, so we can choose Dragonfly to equip Giga Mantis to himself, and then we can use the Zektrite to get the Hornet, use the Hornet to pop the back row. He is going to banish my Hornet, that is going to trigger Dragonfly, and we'll just special summon a Hornet out of deck. That pretty much does the job. So then we use Centipede to equip that Hornet that we searched with special summon the Dragonfly, pop his board, we've cleared his board, and now we're basically free to combo off because we can use Armor Horn to normal summon that Dragonfly, and let's make it happen. So link these 2 off for Pika discard 1 to equip him with Resonance Insect. It's going to trigger that. He's going to trigger his Necro World Banshee. And it's not going to be long for this Earth because we use Hornet. We'll pop that Zombie World. He's got 1 card in hand, Dragonfly into Centipede. Centipede equip the Hornet. Hornet, go ahead and pop that Resonance Insect. We'll chain all 3 of these. What? Plus, 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 you know. Not too bad for a day's work. And I know I was stalling on him there for a bit, but it's just nice to get some practice in. But GG. Alright, last duel I have for you. Let's see how it goes. We've got the P.U.N.K line. We'll do that. Go search Zayaman, normal summon Zayaman, search out Foxy Tune. Yeah, we'll activate Deer Note just to have to have Deer Note in hand, special summon. Synchro these 2 off for Chaos Ruler. Activate Chaos Ruler, activate Deer Note. Bring back Ghost Ogre. Not Ghost Ogre, sorry, Ogre Dance. Add a Dragonfly to hand. We can pull a trigger. We'll just go ahead and search Dragon right here, why not? Exceed these 2 off for the Zombie Vampire, and that's going to get a Nibiru response from my opponent. Luckily, this Nibiru token is kind of big. We'll just go ahead and set the called buy and pass. See what my opponent's on. DM. Once again, thank you Konami for releasing the DM structure deck. I just absolutely adore seeing it on ladder. We're just going to go ahead and ash that summon. That's pretty much going to end his turn. He'll beat over the token. He'll get it for 16 and he'll pass it back without any back row. 4 cards in hand. How are they all dead? Very cool deck. Normal Summon Dragonfly, activate the effect. Equip it with the Centipede, and now we'll use that Zektrike to send that Centipede to grave, which will trigger the Dragonfly, which allows us to equip Hornet onto that Dragonfly and special summon the Centipede. And then we'll use Hornet to pop a monster and special summon another Centipede, use Centipede, equip Hornet, pop a card, use Centipede, search out Giga Weevil, equip another Hornet onto the other Centipede, pop the Giga Weevil. It's going to trigger these two. And once again, I could go for a pretty easy lethal line, but you know, I like getting the practice in, and there's nothing illegal about bullying Dark Magician players. I'm even going to discard the Called By in case my opponent taunt off. I think I've got it from here anyway. I don't think he sticks around much longer than this anyway. But yeah, that scoops it up. Well played. After this, I've got some other cards for you to look over and consider, and then I'll give you my final thoughts on the deck, and then that'll be it. I know I usually display a bunch of staples you might consider running, but I went ahead and dropped them for this video. The reason being that I just don't think there's really any room for them in the deck, and I'll get into that in the final thoughts portion. But the Inzektor portion of the deck just requires so much space, there's just so little flexibility, that I don't really know where you'd find room for like more hand traps, or really any other staple cards. I mean, look, if you know how to play this game, then you have some general game sense and know what cards are good and strong to run. So if there's some staples you like, feel free to put them in. Anyway, some other cards I put together for you to consider. Other than like some I'll point out in particular, I personally don't think most of these are worth running for this deck, but I wanted to show you some of the cards that I did try and just ended up not liking and cutting for various reasons. You could run more of the B-Trooper core cards and also like upping the number of resonance insects you're running. Including more search targets for resonance, like, you know, like the Kaijus or Doom Dozer, including more extenders like the Battle Wasps, or more of the B-Troopers just for extension, or just setting up better boards possibly. Also, you could like include, you know, the normal monsters, so just so Gokipole gets that removal effect. All those cards I just kind of went over, I think do have some okay synergy with the Inzektors, but not really. I mean, the first issue is obviously space. We're already on 42 cards on the build I did put together. And second, and probably more importantly, is that it just basically turns the deck into a bad B-Trooper deck. I think next video I do will be a B-Trooper video, so we'll kind of go over good B-Trooper cards then and there, especially since we just got Crawler Soma. But anyway, like, yes, there are some God hands where you'll be able to use both the Inzektors and the B-Trooper line. There's also an argument to be made where you're using the B-Troopers as a way to set up a turn 1 board and then just search out some of the Inzektor pieces throughout the turn, like use Resonance Insects just to mill a Hornet into grave for later, and then the crackback you have the Inzektor portion of the deck to clear boards and OTK off of. But B-Troopers already are pretty good at OTKing, and like really all like the 14 Inzektor cards you're forced to run are just going to be garnets for the B-Trooper board you're trying to put together. And I just, obviously, that's not good deck building, so I just don't think it's worth doing. And maybe you don't need to go for a full B-Trooper deck, you just want to adopt a couple more of the pieces that I didn't, and I've kind of displayed them here. Like, maybe you really like Arbalest just as a really strong normal summon. So maybe you want to include a couple of them here, or just Doom Dozer just to pair well with Resonance Insect. In terms of other Inzektor cards to consider, I basically went over all of the good ones. They're in the deck. If they're not in the deck, they're probably not good. But the only one I would sort of consider that isn't already in the deck is running Hopper as just a one-of. He has an ability to pop himself as an equipment spell, but not going first because you don't have access to your battle phase. But more importantly, he's the only Inzektor that's level 4, so he is searchable by Gokipole. So it could be a way to get an Inzektor to hand if you have like Motorcycle in hand and no other Inzektors, but have a way to get Gokipole to grave. Now you can possibly combo off because you're able to search out the Hopper with Gokipole. But other than that very particular instance, I don't think Hopper is really worth running. Cocoon of Ultra Evolution is sort of interesting, but it requires such a particular setup. You need an insect with an equipment spell, and sometimes you're just not going to have that, and Cocoon is just going to brick you even worse. Zektrike is basically just a better version of what this card is trying to do for the deck. Cocoon is also a UR for some reason, so I am happy to report I would not recommend crafting this card. For the extra deck, you can get out 2 level 3s pretty easily onto the board, so maybe you want to run Zeus and then his best pilot, Fortune Tune. You can also generally get 2 effect monsters on board pretty easily, so maybe you want to run Verte and DPE. However, I don't think they're real great with the Punk engine, since for milling 9 cards, there's a good shot you'll mill one of the pieces you need for Fusion Destiny, so I don't think it's worth running. In regards to cards that I've listed here that I do think are actually worth considering, I think there could be a version of the deck that just like cuts the Punk engine and instead runs just like a real large danger lineup with a bunch of like deep draw tools. Jackalope and Tsuchinoko line up nicely as dark level 3 monsters. Mothman is a level 4 insect, which lines up nice. But the dangers also work well as a way to spam the board, just dig deeper into the deck, and possibly put Inzektors in the graves that don't mind being there, like Hornet, if you're able to like discard it off the dangers effect. They do a great job of going to Sorry Yugioh, but also Curious. And Curious could like Foolish Burial Hornet into grave, and if you're like Dragonfly in hand, you're probably off to the races. Basically, the build I'm imagining would be like same Inzektor lineup, maybe cut the Ladybugs, but run like triple Jackalope, triple Tsuchinoko, triple Mothman, triple Nessie, triple Lure because the Inzektors and Dangers are all dark, and then you do like triple Upstart, triple Chicken Game, and just try to dig real deep into the deck to get the particular Inzektor pieces you need to combo off. I might end up trying out that deck, so maybe stay tuned for that if I decide to actually try that and find some decent results. If you have tried that out, please let me know. I think that is a deck that could definitely work. Maybe just a Danger Deep Draw deck is better, but I think it could be interesting if you pair it with the Inzektors. But that's pretty much all I have for this section, so next we'll go over my final thoughts for the deck. So I remember back in like 2012, it was obvious Konami needed to hit something from Inzektors to tone down the deck, and I'm really about to show my age, but there was a lot of debate on some Yu-Gi-Oh forums on how they should address it without completely killing the deck. A lot of people wanted to just see Hornet banned, they saw him as the major problem card, and then Inzektors could just be a cool XYZ strat using just Dragonfly and Ladybug. Eventually they ended up hitting both Dragonfly and Hornet to 1, which was probably fair, and they stayed like that for a while. But I remember a comment from someone about how much they hated this hit. They basically said how this hit ruined the deck. It just turned a good deck into a bad deck with a broken combo, meaning, you know, the Dragonfly, Sword, and Hornet. If they're able to assemble that, they're able to OTK you, but otherwise the deck just really isn't doing anything. And I think that comment still kind of holds up today, just describing the deck in general. I mean, just from some of those duels and then just the combo portion of this video, you can probably see why Konami left Dragonfly on the list for so long. The way Dragonfly can proc like a dozen times on the turn and Hornet can clear a board, it's really not okay. It was stupid strong back in 2012, and I mean today it's just kind of sort of strong, but it's still kind of crazy. I don't know. The biggest issue is just how the game's evolved. I mean, so what if your deck summons a dozen times? You could probably name a dozen decks that can do that. I mean, there's like 3 questions that come after that. I mean, the first question is how easily can they do that? How do they deal playing through interruption? And then last, what are you doing with all of those summons? And then the answers to those questions kind of determines the viability of your combo deck. And then that gets into like this deck's first main weakness is setup. Like, yes, it's great that Hornet can be in hand or grave and you only need one of them, but you still need to find him. And not only do you need to find him, you need to find Dragonfly and Centipede in order to take advantage of him. Likewise, like if you find your Dragonflies but you don't find your Hornet, you're not really doing much. And then another issue is just how much like the Inzektor package you need to run to take advantage of it. So we don't really have much room to mix in other engines or staples just to improve the deck in general. And the Inzektors themselves can be just so bricky and just weird particular hands when you don't find just like that singular piece you need to make it all work. In terms of like how many of each card you have to run, like yes, you only need 1 Dragonfly to combo off, but you need to run it 3 because we need to find him. And then next up, like we don't really want to draw him, but we need to run 3 Centipede because we need someone to special summon from deck for Dragonfly, and to continue to find resources for you to use throughout the combo. And then like yes, you only need the 1 of Hornet and Grave, and we really don't need Ladybug. But we desperately need to find one of them to even get things moving, so we end up wasting 5 of our slots just for the hope of seeing one of these. And then just the Gigas and the Zek Sword. We need something that can equip themselves, so that's like 3 slots right there, and if you don't have the right setup, they're just the worst bricks possible in your hand. The Legacy support Zektrike, also Pika Felina. They fit perfectly into the deck and resolve some of those issues, but even they aren't enough. Sometimes you'll find the Dragonflies and Centipedes, but you can't find the Hornets, and sometimes it's the other way around. In either case, you're not doing anything without it, and your opponent isn't going to give you 2 to 3 turns to fix that issue. Next up is just Interruption. I mean, 2012 had Valor, but now we've got Ash, Imperm, Ghost Bell, etc., 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 that we have to deal with. Not to mention, the deadliest insect of all time, Max C. It's very unlikely that we can play through any of those. And then the last issue is, what are we doing with a million summons if we do get to do that? Well, we're doing the same thing every combo deck kind of does. We're summoning Barone, we're summoning Apollo USA, and sometimes we're not because we have to deal with a bunch of shitty insect summoning locks that can be hard to play around. And then even if we are able to get out like Apollo and Barone, sometimes even that isn't enough. And at the end of the day, they're just decks that can put up a crazy combo board that is similar to ours, maybe even better, and they can do it easier than us. So yeah, sorry to kind of be a downer on this deck. I know I usually don't start with like the weaknesses of the deck. I like to go over the strengths. But unfortunately, this deck just isn't that good, even though I want it to be, even though there is something definitely crazy here. It's hard to deny how good Dragonfly still is. This deck might only be like 1 to 2 new cards away from being like rogue playable. So maybe Konami will someday give the Bug Boys some love in the somewhat near future, which I would like to see. But coming back to today, in regards to strengths for the current deck, when you get to pop off, you can combo like crazy, you can pick apart a board with ease, and you can generate resources like a madman. For a combo deck, it's also pretty resource efficient. Not only do you get to set up a strong board, you can add like an additional Dragonfly to hand and Hornet into hand to make it happen again next turn, and we're able to like get all our centipedes back into the deck. So I mean, that alone is pretty crazy, and also you saw it in some of the slower duels. In a slowed down game where you get a chance to breathe, find the pieces you need, the deck can really excel when you just get to eke out advantage with some Hornet Pops and Dragonfly and Centipede pluses just over a couple turns. Eventually you'll just be so many cards up on your opponent, you just win the game, or eventually you just get the pieces put together, just find that blowout turn. I am happy the deck at least has that going for it. In terms of price, this deck is kind of dumb expensive, especially for what you get. The only reason I have this deck is because when I picked up Master Duel when they first released it, I hadn't played Yu-Gi-Oh! In probably 8 or 9 years, and I was like, oh shit, Dragonfly and Hornet back at 3, I want to roll up to ladder with that. So the Inzektor Secret Pack was like the first thing I went into. I still don't really have any regrets about it. I love these bug boys. But anyway, Dragonfly is a UR, and like I've said before, 3 copies are required, and then a bunch of the other Inzektors are SRs, and then you need a bunch of URs for the B-Trooper stuff, and they still don't even have their own secret pack, so I guess sorry if you missed them. Then the P.U.N.K engine also isn't cheap, but hey, at least they're good cards. So unless like the Inzektor's like your baby or your child, or you just really think you can crack the meta with them, I would not really recommend building this deck, or really any Inzektor variant. But, I hope you had fun at least watching some of the duels with this. And I mean, in terms of fun, this deck is actually very fun. I mean, part of that is the nostalgia blasting. And then part of that is just how crazy comboing off with Inzektors can be, especially with the advent of Link monsters. I mean, back in the day, we were going into like Giga Brilliant as part of our boards for Inzektors. So, it's nice to be able to go into an Apollo instead of that. But honestly, this probably will be a deck I'll bust out on occasions when I'm looking to goof off with. But I'm honestly not ever going to expect too much on it when I take it to ladder. Also, I know like tomorrow we're about to be in a certain tier 0 format, so I mean, good luck to every other deck anyway, I guess. But to summarize, like maybe some final thoughts on the deck, if she doesn't find you meta, she should at least find you funny. If that joke went over your head, go ask your dad, I guess. I don't know. But just to tie everything together, just one last final thought about the deck.
Card games on motorcycles!
Yeah, something like that. But that's it for me regarding Inzektors. If you have any other thoughts or questions, feel free to post them below. If you like the video, I greatly appreciate any likes. And if you want to watch me continue memeing, be sure to subscribe and check out my other videos. So good night, so long, good luck, and I'll see ya!
Card games on motorcycles!